quite a big one.
Yeah, quite a big one. Kayla Harrison has officially
Finally.
re-signed with the PFL. I believe it's a 2-year contract. The PFL matched the offer that Bellator had given at the 11th hour. Apparently, I didn't know this when we talked about Kayla previously because I don't really know him. I don't know. I'm not on the inside. I don't know the
Right.
contracts.
Right.
Apparently, the PFL in their contract had the right to match any offer
Yeah.
that any other promotion would give. Kind of like a restricted free agent in basketball.
Basically.
So you saw a lot of frustration with Kayla in the weeks leading up to this, and now she's finally signed. PFL also had some other things that came out, but we're going to start with Kayla Harrison, Dominic. Now that the dust has settled, it's over. This marathon of a free agency that we've been through. Who was the biggest winner of this free agency, and who was the biggest loser, in your opinion? I know. Tough question on the spot.
That is tough. I mean, truthfully, the biggest winner is probably still Kayla because she's clearly securing the bag from all signs. That's what it's pointing toward here, with another chance to win an extra $1 million on top of that with the PFL season. I starting up in April or May, sometime later this spring. So, it's always tough, that tournament, but for her right now in the competition that's there, it looks like she's well on her way to securing another 1 million and a third belt. So I'd say she's definitely the biggest winner, which would, I guess, mean PFL is a winner too. I don't necessarily think I don't want to say Bellator is a loser because there's a couple things we're going to get into next that goes along with this story that I might kind of touch on. So really, after everything, the dust has settled, I don't know if there is a loser, in my opinion. I'm actually curious to get your thoughts on that.
So I would agree with you. Kayla Harrison, the biggest winner of this whole thing.
Yeah.
I know some people may not view it that way because, she really wanted to test herself and prove that she's the best in the world. And I think a lot of people are like, well, she's not going to get to do that now because she's staying in the PFL. You know what? I might say the PFL is the biggest winner, actually. Because I do think there is something to that for Kayla. Yes, she's going to get paid well.
Yeah.
But it does feel a little bit like a lateral move because, again, she is staying in a promotion that isn't really at this time capable of giving her big fights. I mean, Julia Budd's an interesting fight, but doesn't quite carry the same weight of a Cris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes fight, etc. So I would say the PFL retaining their biggest star is the biggest one because you know how much there was probably riding on that. We even questioned how much was riding on that. Was the PFL in danger if she left? That'd be a big blow. The first star, the only star they've really created themselves at this point. Now, the biggest loser is names like Jenna Fabian, Taylor.
I see where you went. Yeah.
It's any of those other lightweights in the women's division that thought they might have a chance to win $1 million. Because, I mean, you might as well write her the check now. I'm sure that plays a part in here, and we're gonna see similar. I mean, who knows? Obviously, after the Juliana Pena Amanda Nunes fight,
this gets brought up almost every week now.
I guess anything's possible, right?
Yeah,
that's the sport of MMA. But it feels like you're gonna get a lot of what we saw last season.
Yeah.
For the next 2 years, and I mean that's fine. Hey, I love Kayla Harrison. I love watching her dominate, but it's a little disappointing considering what could have been. Now there is the question of. Now it's almost like the shoe's been put on the other foot, where now Kayla Harrison has the secure contract, and Cris Cyborg has apparently a contract that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, well, is Cris Cyborg going to go to the PFL?
Yeah.
And this kind of leads us into our second part here, where the PFL also announced, their CEO did, along with this contract. So, how am I going to say this? So they announced they're planning to move the pay-per-view or to have fights on pay-per-view.
Right.
Is the sentiment. And they announced this with Kayla Harrison because they said Kayla is going to fight in the tournament, the lightweight tournament, but also she will be a part of a pay-per-view super fight division. There was no other explanation.
Yes.
That was pretty much it. So, Dominic, your thoughts your immediate thoughts. I know we'll have to see what happens, but when you heard PFL's wanting to make this push for pay-per-view, do you support it? Do you not? And what is this super fight division that they're talking about?
I definitely don't think it's a great move business-wise for them. We've already discussed how they're hiding the contender fights. I called them contender fights. The challenger fights behind a paywall on Fubo
Yeah.
TV. Now you're going to charge people
Yeah, who would pay?
pay-per-views.
Yeah, I mean, who would pay for that? I mean,
I know, right? I don't even know anybody that did. But and now you're going to do pay-per-view events as well. Listen, I'm all for these MMA organizations trying to make money, trying to build their audience, but for an organization that's not the UFC, it's very hard to go the pay-per-view route. And I think that's why I'm not going to say this is going to it might fail. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now. But I don't like it. I don't think it's a smart move. Me and Noah were texting back and forth in our Twitter DMs when we get these news stories, and we both kind of said there's only like one thing worth it. You know what I mean? And it is a Kayla versus Cyborg, which we will again touch on in a second, I'm sure. But other than that, because it looks like they're going to try and cross promote. Well, we know the UFC is not going to do that. They're not going to do it. Noah's had very long-winded speeches on why the UFC will not do this. So are you going to cross promote with one? Or are you going to cross promote with Bellator? That's kind of your only route here. And even then, how many big super fights can you actually make that are going to garner enough audience to buy your pay-per-view to pay and make up for it, essentially? Make it worthwhile. There's just I can't name any others, honestly, besides Kayla versus Cyborg. So with that said, I think it's not the greatest look. I know you have your own thoughts as well.
I was watching recently. I told you occasionally I'll go back when I don't have anything to watch or listen to at work. I'll put on there was a show that MMA Fighting used to have on their YouTube channels called the Mma Beat. Some of you longer hardcore UFC fans will probably be aware of it. Personalities like Ariel Helwani, Chuck Mindenhall, Luke Thomas, these guys were all big features on. There was like a panel of like 4 people working in MMA journalism in some capacity, and they would just give their thoughts on the biggest topics of the week or whatever, or any upcoming cards, whatever it might be. One of their earliest episodes, which was probably 2012 or so, I was watching before this announcement came out. And it was talking about how Bellator, who maybe now we don't know, but when Bellator first started, they did tournaments.
Yeah.
Season tournaments. That was what the PFL is kind of doing now, that was at one time what Bellator did. They had announced they were making a move to pay-per-view. And they were planning to it was Rampage Jackson versus Tito Ortiz. That was going to be the fight, which was an okay fight at that time, but I believe Tito fell out, and it ended up being like Rampage versus King Mo. It was a big deal for Bellator at one time, but it bombed. The pay-per-view bombed. It was a complete failure, and you saw eventually Bellator went to DAZN, which was behind a paywall, but it elevated them a little bit, and now they're on Showtime doing pretty well.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. I'm just going to be honest with you, and even if we both said it, Dom. Cyborg, Kayla is the only fight that really makes sense for this. Here's the brutal truth about that fight, though. Does it sell more than 200,000 pay-per-view buys? I mean, I don't think so. Yeah. Kayla Harrison's a big deal, but I don't think she's quite reached she hasn't quite hit that nerve with the casual fans or people who don't even watch MMA regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, she was at we talked about on the show. She was at a what was it, like a festival?
They did like a holiday parade back.
It was a holiday parade.
Yeah.
In her home area.
Yes.
Which is where we're from as well.
Yeah.
And our buddy who was there said that it wasn't like people were treating her like a celebrity. You know, you could walk right up to her and it's like she was. People see there was she definitely had her observers and people who knew who she was, but this was like her home area, and she wasn't being bombarded with, a mob of people.
Right.
So I think it's generous to say that her and Cyborg would sell 200,000 pay-per-views. It's a big fight, but it's a big fight for us, the hardcore fans.
Yeah.
So I don't really see where they make their money here. Are they going to try to pick up scraps that the UFC cut? Like, are they going to try to sign some of these names that may fall through the cracks here soon or something. I don't know. But I question it 100%. And as far as what a pay-per-view super fight division is, I mean, I think it's going to still be weight. It's not like we're going to see if they signed like Alistair Overeem or something. I'm just throwing out a name. There's no chance we're going to see Overeem versus Kayla Harrison. But
right.
it's not like they're in the same division. But I think it's more that they want to have fights separate from the tournament because this is the same dilemma the UFC ran into in the early 90s. When they started it all, right, in America. They were doing one-night tournaments for like 4 or 5 years. But then within a few events, I mean, UFC 5 was the first super fight, title fight. There was a whole tournament, but then there was a main event separate from the tournament that saw Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock, the rematch.
Mm-hmm.
They were both in the UFC 3 tournament, I believe. And that's the one where Royce fought Kimo Leopoldo, who was just this big fucking bruiser of a man at that time. And Royce won, but he got fucked up in the fight.
Yeah.
So he's out. Well, Ken Shamrock says, well, I only want to fight Royce Gracie, so now I'm out.
Yeah.
So then they don't get either guy in the finals, and then they had a replacement fighter step in and who hadn't fought at all that night and win the whole tournament, Steve Jenham. So didn't work out. So they finally were like, well, let's just give people the matchups they want.
Right.
Separate from the tournament. This is what I think the PFL's running into now. There's certain matchups they want to make, but they don't want to risk their tournament format
Exactly.
hurting it. You know, they've signed a lot of names last year, and a lot of those didn't really pay off.
Not at all. Yeah.
But they could have, I guess, theoretically, if they had fights separate, Anthony Pettis could have probably headlined some sort of card against another big name. But again, this is all, like, I'm okay with PFL wanting to have separate fights from the tournament.
Yeah, we've advocated for that, you know?
I want to see more fights throughout the year.
Yeah.
That's what I've been saying. But not with pay-per-view. That's no. Let's keep the PFL or keep the ESPN Plus thing going. Just can we get more events throughout the year? I don't know. Maybe we can't, but I don't like the idea of adding a pay-per-view. It's just more money that MMA fans have to spend. We already have to spend so much money to follow this sport, to follow it as much as we do. I mean, you got to pay for all these different platforms that show all these fights. PFL's already asking you to spend $65 on Fubo a month, which who would do that again?
I know.
Seriously, what a dumbass to do that. But now you're going to ask us to pay another, I don't know, would it be like 30, 40, $50 for a pay-per-view? Come on. Yeah, get it out of here. I mean,
it's tough. It's tough.
Now, before we get